Alright, so that was a poem from the main character, Ivan Denisovich, who is also called Shukov to dehumanize him in the camp. So you might hear either Ivan or Shukov, it's the same person. Alright, so now we're going to go to the history of the novel, which is very important. Seems as if we have a special visitor.
You know what this means? Everybody up! Up! Rows before line! Let's go!
Get up!
Check! Then check! Line up!
Get up! Get up! Get up! Get up! Get up! Get up! Get up! Not a matter.
Watch out. You're gonna watch the camera.
Oh.
Stand straight. Arms at your side.
Is anyone not wearing a badge?
You're gonna have a badge. You're not gonna have a kneecap in a minute.
Is anybody missing?
Stand up
Alright.
straight. What's wrong with you? Good answer.
Alright, I think we're good here.
I'll be back.
Better watch yourself.
I'll be watching this one here too.
Alright, back to work, everybody. Let's go! Okay, so guys, as you all probably know, this novel took place during the Soviet Russia time period, and basically Stalin was in control of the government at this time, and everything was regulated, and everything was highly structured, and whether or not you were in a gulag, you were basically living in a regulated society where the government had control of everything that you did. And you had to be very careful because anything that you said or did could get you in a potential gulag. So they created it so that Russia's economy would be turned into a government-run or a command economy. And this was in order to benefit everyone, they said, but it wasn't necessarily true. And they came up with a 5-year plan which would be used to expand and modernize Russia, as well as protect it. And they were trying to secure it, I guess, from attack from the West. It was going to be they were trying to create a totalitarian government in which basically you're like a communist government.
Yeah, it's completely run by the government. And the 5-year plan included building roads, railways, and canals all over the country. Projects like helped the country, but they didn't really help the common man in Russia. And it also led to like insufficient hospital, house, and school numbers, so it just turned away from the common man to benefit Stalin and his country that he was imagining. And he focused on ridding the country of anyone else who was a kulak or a high-income farmer.
And then the totalitarian state is when the government has no limits and has complete control over all aspects of your life. And only the Communist Party could exist. And all religious leaders were prosecuted. And writers could only write positive things about the government, and you got jailed for going against the propaganda. So they hired artists.
And this is just some of the propaganda for Stalin to support him, and babies and the Russian flag.
And then communist ideas and morals were taught at all of the schools. And secret police would patrol looking for people who opposed Stalin.
And that was sort of like a random secret police check that we had there with Mr. Hofstadter. And these were called purges.
And more than 10 million individuals were sent to labor camps for various reasons.
Alright, the gulags were the camps that, were the labor camps that were used to torture people. The prisoners experienced long, exhausting work days, up to 14 hours a day. Shukov had to lay bricks all day. Most of the work included manual, hard work. Little food was given out to prisoners.
As you've seen.
The amount of food equaled the amount of work, so the more work you did, you'd get a slightly bigger ration, but not by much. They were mainly fed thin, watery soup and bad bread. Spoons were rare, but Shukov had one that he made. The prisoners were dehumanized and had no sense of value. People were sent to labor camps for all the littlest crimes. Theft, murder, rape, saying, doing anything anti-government, or even being late for work. Stealing potatoes equaled 10 years, joking against a government official is 25 years, and being late to work 3 times is 3 years.
And this is in the world.
Some prisoners snitched on other prisoners. They were called informers. Snitching usually led to searches such as the one you just saw. During the searches, the authorities took all of the good supplies for themselves.
So you're in a gulag now, so good luck staying alive.
Alrighty. Lucky for you guys, we have a special guest who's coming in today to speak to you. He is very well known in Russia.
This is Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who is the author of the book.
Hi, I'm Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the author of One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. I was arrested in 1945 after being accused of writing anti-Soviet propaganda. I was terrorized in a prison in Moscow, Russia. After months there, I was given 8 years in a labor camp. 5 years later, they sent me to a special camp made just for men who had committed political crimes. I mined and laid bricks in Kazakhstan for 3 years. It was from that camp that I got the inspiration for One Day in the Life. I was finally released in 1956 and went on to write many works. In 1962, One Day in the Life was published, and in 1970 I won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Overall, my main goal in life has been to use my life experiences to bring to the attention of others in the Soviet Union and in the West that gulags are harsh places. Thank you for your time, and please carry my message with you.
Alright, so he sort of incorporated his life into the book, and he showed that anti-Soviet propaganda was an extremely big deal because he was busted for this and put in the gulag for something he wrote in a letter about a politician.
And Shukov was sent to a special camp where only men were there, and he had to do a lot of manual labor, such as laying bricks.
Shukov was sent to a labor camp because he was a prisoner of war, and while he was a prisoner of war, they accused him of being a spy. And although he wasn't a spy, they basically forced him into signing over the fact that he was a spy, and if he didn't do that, he was going to be killed. So he was basically forced into doing something, and it caused him to be sent to a labor camp for all this time.
And also in the novel, Shukov has to lay bricks just like the author had to.
So now we're going to go into a photo story of the plot.
Okay, the sound doesn't exactly work, so we're just going to narrate it for you. Go ahead, Alex.
Based in 1951, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich is a novel that enlightens readers about the experience of gulags, or work camps, used for punishment during the Soviet-Russian time period. In this story, by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the main character Ivan details one day in his seemingly endless sentence serving in a Siberian gulag. It is the goal of these work camps to destroy the human image of each of its detainees and leave them as empty shells that will conform to the wants of the communist government. Known as Shukov, Ivan is a 40-year-old, balding man that lacks teeth at this point. He is sent to a work camp because he was a German prisoner of war in World War II, and he was accused of being a German spy. With the only other option being death, Shukov is forced to admit to the crime he did not commit and is sentenced to 10 years in the gulag. Woken by Reveille, the daily wake-up call of all prisoners, Shukov feels even more sore and tired than usual. Realizing an easier guard was on duty, he remains in bed on this blistering cold day of negative 30 degrees for an extra few minutes. This mistake gets him in trouble with the warden, and although he is told that he will be sent to the can for 3 days, he only has to scrub floors. The can is the most drastic punishment one can receive in a gulag, for it is a cold, individual cell that prisoners are sent to for days on end with very little food.
After completing this task, Shukov goes to the mess hall late, removes his cap, and eats the remaining food with his handcrafted spoon. Since he still does not feel well after breakfast, he heads to the hospital only to find it is closed. They agree to take his temperature, but it is too low for him to stay in from work, so he decides it is in his best interest to head back out with the rest of Gang 104 to get started on the day's task. When he returns to his gang, he is greeted by his friend Pavlo and is given his ration of 6 ounces of bread, even though he is aware that the amount is definitely not the full proportion. Full of intelligence and experience, he sews half of it into his mattress to assure no one steals it and puts the rest in his illegal coat pocket before heading out to be searched. Lined up 5 by 5 and searched repeatedly, before departing for their destination, prisoners are forced to undress and are put through a rigorous search to look for extra civilian clothes.
Eventually, they head off for the power plant that they are in the process of building. Shukov notes how difficult it is to be a guard, as they are responsible for the prisoners and the proper marching of the gang. Upon their arrival, Gang 104 is told that they will be adding a second story to the building that day. Before they start working, they hang tar paper as a barrier to protect themselves from the harsh elements. As the amount of food that is given to the gangs is based on their productivity, all members work hard. This simple fact shows that the physical comfort that almost everyone in the Gulag relies on, for it is the mere physical needs that they need to keep going.
Shukov talks about some others in the camps, such as the respectable foreman Tyurin Fetyukov, a low moral man who represents the dehumanization and low loss of self-worth in the gulags, Gopchik, a rosy-cheeked 16-year-old, and Alyoshka, a very cheerful Baptist prisoner. It is these people that Shukov has become closer to over the preceding years as he grows away from his true family. He is to work on the stove with Gopchik, and while they are working, they hide some wire to use to make Gopchik a spoon later on. As the men talk about the good temperature of negative 18 degrees that is for bricklaying, noon arrives and they are called in for lunch. When Shukov is in the line to get food for his gang, he slyly counts while the cook is counting, so as to throw off the cook and to end up getting extra food. Although he has to hand over the extra food to his gang leader, when it is distributed, he is given an additional bowl of roll, the typical soup-like food that is served. The other remaining extra bowls are distributed to certain others in the gang. The men head back to the power plant in a good mood. When they arrive, Shukov instructs the men to begin mixing mortar. However, they must first chip away the ice. They begin immediately, and a business overseer enters and yells at Tyurin for using the tar paper, threatening that there could be additional sentencing. As Gang 104 continues working, Alyoshka and Bainovsky start bringing brick in for the gang to use, a very painful task. When Shukov sees this, he begins to wish that all the members were as helpful as they are. After sunset, Tyurin inspects the progress that was made and tells Shukov to discard the remaining mortar as the day is finishing up, but he continues to work. Senka, a deaf man in the camp, stays behind with Shukov until he is told to go ahead. Alone, Shukov takes the opportunity to hide his trowel, one that he always uses, for it is a better trowel than the others. During the head count before the prisoners depart for the evening, the guards notice that one member is missing. Although the prisoner is not from Gang 104, no one is allowed to leave. Eventually, the missing Moldavian man who had fallen asleep returns to his line, and the count starts again. It is thought that this man would be beaten later on for making many members wait, since everyone is in a rush to get back to camp. After many wasted minutes of counting, the men depart for the dining hall once again. While Shukov was originally planning to return to the hospital when they got back, he feels better, so he decides to simply head over for dinner.
A few minutes from the camp, Gang 104 sees a rival gang coming and decides to run in order to get dinner first. As they begin to pass through security, Shukov recalls the piece of wire in his pocket and considers discarding it so he does not risk getting caught and being put in the can. However, he realizes it can bring him in the camp if he gets in, so he takes the chance and manages to get it inside uncaught. He then asks Caesar if he would like him to stand in line at the package room for him, hoping to earn a reward. Caesar accepts this offer, and Shukov heads to wait in the hour-long line. While there, he thinks of someone giving him a package one day, but knows this will never happen as he has told his wife to keep everything for their family. After getting Caesar's package, Shukov asks if he should get him his dinner, but Caesar tells him to have his dinner for himself. Happy to have another additional meal, he hurries to get in line with his gang. As they must enter the dining hall in twos with their gang in order to get food, he pushes his way up to the front of the line to his gang, where he enters with Gopchik. They fill trays for food for the gang and go to the tables. Shukov keeps 2 of the thickest bowls for himself and sets the rest down for the remainder of his gang members.
Quickly exiting after he finishes his dinner, Shukov goes over to the Latvian man to purchase tobacco from him. He then returns to the sleeping quarters to deliver Caesar his ration of bread. Having a bed covered in goods that were sent to him, he tells Shukov to keep the bread for himself once again. Grateful, he hops into bed and decides to make the wire into a knife, which Caesar borrows in return for some sausage, biscuits, and sugar. At this point, Fedyukov comes back sobbing and bleeding, for he was beaten for licking the bowls at dinner. Although he never before felt bad for Fedyukov, Shukov suddenly feels pity for his situation. A warden known as Snubnose enters and yells at Tyurin because some of his illiterate men have not submitted why they have forbidden items. Also, he yells at the captain and tells him that he is being taken to the can for 10 days. Shukov notes that this will leave him with tuberculosis, and 15 days in the can will leave a man dead. After yet another body count, Shukov takes off his boots and gets in bed. He is pleased with the day and thanks God out loud. He sees Alyoshka reading his New Testament and is told by him that he is praying wrong. Shukov explains that his prayers are never answered, and Alyosha responds by telling him that he doesn't pray hard enough and that prayer should be for spiritual good, not earthly ones like bread. Another body count is called, and by this time many are already asleep. While he is waiting outside, Shukov wonders why Alyoshka does favors without expecting anything in return, and decides to give him a biscuit when they get back inside. Now completing his 3,653rd day out of his 10-year sentence, a day filled with extra food, the addition of wire for a knife, and tobacco, Shukov falls asleep content with his day and current situation.
Alright, so next is a movie showing the last couple parts of the plot line, and it's the main 4 characters, and they're basically acting out the end of the day in their bunks.
Is everyone good with the plot line? The one thing that we want to emphasize is the fact that even though this was the plot for this story, if another book was written about the same type of situation, it could be very similar or very different. It was just one of those things that, like, every day was just the same process, the same routine, and this just happened to be a very good day for Shukov because he ended up getting a lot more food than anyone else did, and then he would normally get.
Turn the volume up, please.
Wait, you have to make it big. No. Click on it again. Click on it.
We started
Thank you.
Thank God for my good day.
Look here, Mom. Your soul wants to pray to God, so why don't you let it have its way?
How do you always pray so much when all your prayers just get rejected?
Well, the trouble is you don't pray hard enough. That's why your prayers don't work. You must have unceasing faith and pray for things in the Spirit, not earthly goods.
Unceasing faith? How am I supposed to have unceasing faith in a place like this? I mean, look at this. This is... How do you have faith? No! What happened to your face?
I've been beaten for licking crumbs out of bowls.
Does not surprise me. No, Ivan, may I borrow your knife? Be a good man. Here, take some bread, Pep. Hey, Fenyuka, stop it!
Okay, so that was just to sort of like show the characterization of some of the main characters. And I was Fetchukov, and he is a follower. He is envious of the people who are richer and smarter than him. He has currently lost hope, as you saw. He wants pity for his stupidity and things like that. And he's always on the lookout for food for him to steal. He disregards work. He's not a hard worker, so he shows the dehumanization that the Gulag can cause, and he's the exact opposite of Zhukov. And he is a scavenger.
Okay, and I was Alyoshka, and Alyoshka actually likes the camp, and he has very little, but he's still extremely pleased with what he does have, and he's not easily swayed by others. He's very devoted to his religion. He was the only Baptist that was in the book. He's spiritual and a helping hand to everyone around him, showing in the video he wanted to help Zhukov pray better so he could get what he wanted, but he had to teach him how to pray. And he loves mankind, and he's very peaceful.
Alright, I had Caesar. He is well connected to his family. He still keeps contact. He's artsy. He knows about all of the goings-on in the world somehow. And he's well off and very rich. He's willing to share his wealth. He shares food with Zhukov in the movie. And he has special privileges in the camp. He gets to do special things because he's rich. And he receives packages of food.
And I was Zhukov, who's the main character, and he's very experienced in survival, and he's been in these camps for about 10 years, so he knows what he has to do to survive, and that makes him a very hard worker. He's intellectually inclined, as opposed to some of the others in the camp, although basically everyone there is kind of on the lower end, the peasant end of society. They're not educated. He's knowledgeable and wise, and he sees the glass as half full. He's not quite as out there and happy as Alyoshka is, but he's pretty good. And he's on his own in the world. He doesn't really stay connected to his family at this point anymore. He knows that they're kind of doing their own thing now, and he lives for the day and working with his teammates at trying to do his best to do.
Now we're going to move on to a PowerPoint that shows the different types of figurative language in the novel.
Okay, there are a lot of similes in the book, and you have a list in your packet, but they were mainly used to compare things and just to show how bad the prisoners had it, such as if we don't manage to keep warm, we'll freeze like stray dogs. And yeah, these are just some more that we found.
Personification was mainly used to show like what was going on in the camp, and you also have these examples.
And an example would be the cold was vicious, but it had nothing on the gang boss, and that's just like helping with the setting.
Onomatopoeias weren't used that much in the book, but one example was the gang came after him over the snow. Tramp, 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 crunch, crunch, crunch.
Imagery was also used to set up especially the areas that they were working in the camp. The one example is the big red sun, sort of covered in mist, was slanting through the wires of the gate, across the whole compound and through the wire far off on the other side.
There are a lot of symbols in the book. They were very important. Zhukov's spoon that he has represents how independent and crafty he is, that he can make a spoon, unlike many others. Also, his hat, he takes it off before he eats, which shows that he is still human. Their boots that they have, they only get one pair of boots, and often, since they're in Siberia, their boots get really wet, so they have to make sure that they put them in front of the fire at night to dry them, and that just shows that the campers still have responsibility. The trowel represents the higher classes, and a trowel is like a shovel, and Shukov has that to work with.
That's the one that he hides. He hides it during the camp day in order to ensure that that's the one that he gets the next day because it's better than the rest of them.
The illegal pocket just showed the desperate measures that they went to, and that's where he hid the wire to make the spoon later. And the wind and snow represent the harshness of the gulags. They had to go through a lot, and like she said, there was only one pair of boots, so if they had holes in them or they froze, you had a very high chance of getting sick from that. And the sun's position is shown a couple times throughout the book, and it symbolizes Shukov's position in his day. It's like at noon when the sun was at the highest, they would be going to eat lunch.
Alright, the book was written in the third person limited view, and this was to help see what life was like for Shukov, but also for the entire camp, so you could tell like what Shukov was experiencing all the time, but you could also see how other people handled it in addition to how Shukov handled it.
The structure, the book didn't have any chapter numbers, and it only covers one day, so it was kind of written in a way that it was just a continuous day cycle of what they went through. It shows how basically every day was the same for the campers. They did the same thing every day. They woke up at Reveille and they went to bed. That was the same thing every single day. And it's written in a very simple style because Shukov is kind of the lower class, and he goes to the nurse at the beginning to try to see if he can sit out for the day because he's really ill. And the one person there, the one doctor, is writing a poem, and he doesn't really know what it is. He kind of understands that he's writing something, but he can't read it, and he doesn't really understand. So it's kind of like showing that the whole book is written from their point of view.
These are just some important quotes, and you have these on your packet, and they just further exemplify the things that went on in the Gulag, such as on page 81, it says, "It's easy to give away things that don't belong to you," and he kept saying that the work was the best cure for illness, so this was just like their mindset when they were in the Gulags.
He pretty much thought that as long as you worked long and hard, you would feel good. That's the only way you could get satisfaction out of your life. We're in a Gulag.
Alright, so now our theme posters.
Do you want to get the lights on?
You guys want to take a look at our movie poster over here real quick? Basically, the background is a flag of the Soviet-Russian government, and this is the symbol that they have on it. And then this is an example of the uniform that they would wear, something like that. The emphasis on the number and how important it was. If you weren't identified, you had to go get that taken care of immediately because it was a big deal for them.
And that's Shukov's number.
Yes. And that's the spoon that Shukov crafted. He was working on one, and he was working on a knife at the end of the book, but it just showed his, a little bit higher skill than the rest of them. And then this is just the bricks and stuff, and the snow represents, along with the trowel, represents their work during the days and the building of the power plant.
The great thing about the spoon is that Shukov created it himself, and he took great pride in everything that he does. He takes great care of his boots, and he hides his trowel. He thinks he's very, clever for doing all of this, and that's how he takes pride in himself.
Alright, and then have some theme posters. These are sort of the three main themes of the book. And the first would be thankful for what you have, because this book really shows you that, no matter what happens in your life, it could be worse if you were in the Gulag. And you have all these quotes in your packet, but just some that support it is the fact that at the end of the book he says about how he had such a good day, and that would be ridiculous to most people because if you're in this camp, you usually wouldn't really think of it as a good day, but he just decides to take what he is given and be thankful for it.
And then the next would be humanity can survive in the worst of situations. So some was just that when he took his hat off to eat, that shows that he still sees himself as a human, where Begenkov just kind of comes in and steals wherever he can just to survive. And one quote for this is, some of them shouted after him, "Keep your chin up, don't let him get you down."
Another thing about the humanity can survive in the harsh when he takes off his hat during like dinner, it's not because the fact that it's warmer inside where they're eating. It has nothing to do with the conditions. It has nothing to do with anything. It's like Kara said, just simply because he does everything that he can in order to try to keep the humanity in the camps. And that's another thing that Alyosha works on too. He has actually he hand-copied the New Testament into a notebook, and he keeps that with him, and he reads out of it every day, like whenever they have free time in the morning or before they go to bed, just keeping his ideals with him. And it's just like every individual has little pieces of what they still have from home to survive in this situation, but it's just like there's some who have completely lost hope, catch up, and just are dealing with whatever they can at this point.
The last theme is live in the moment, and Shukov does this by not counting down his work days. He doesn't really know exactly how much longer he has because he doesn't bother counting down, because that would just make it seem like a very long time, just like looking at the clock before it's time to go home from school or something. And he focuses on his work so he can get bread, so he tries really hard to do the best that he can in the situation that he has.
Alright, so if you guys didn't notice, we are dressed like the guards in the camp would be. So now it's time for us to give you your list of work for the day. So you guys are going to be going out into the Siberian cold, and you can lay bricks. So get ready and get your stuff because it's going to be cold out there.
Is that it?
Thank you.
Or not.